Okay, today we are going over fractions and decimals on the number line, the walkaway, where the objective is I can use a number line to compare and order positive and negative fractions and decimals. So it's important that we understand certain vocabulary words before we move on with this new topic. So first of all, a positive fraction is a quantity less than 1 but greater than 0, written as a fraction of a whole number. Okay, then a negative fraction is a quantity less than 0 but greater than -1, also written as a fraction of a negative whole number. Okay, positive decimal, a quantity less than 1 but greater than 0, written as a quantity to the right of a decimal point. And the last vocabulary word we need to go over is negative decimal, which is a quantity less than 0 but greater than -1, written as a negative quantity to the right of the decimal point. And this will make more sense as we move on. Let's go over the procedure for comparing or ordering positive and negative fractions and decimals. Step number 1 is you need to graph each fraction. So write in the word fraction or decimal on a number line by placing a point or a dot on the number line to represent each given fraction or decimal. Remember, positive fractions and decimals are placed to the right of the 0 on a horizontal side-to-side number line and above 0 on a vertical up and down number line. Negative fractions and decimals are placed to the left of 0 on a horizontal number line and below 0 on a vertical number line. We went over this yesterday. It's the same with whole number integers that we were working with this week. Step number 2, when ordering fractions or decimals, least to greatest, write the fractions or decimals as they appear on a horizontal number line from left to right, or as they appear on a vertical number line, bottom to top. And then if you'll turn that piece of paper over, we can continue with step number 3, which says when ordering fractions or decimals greatest to least, so write in the word least, write the fractions or decimals as they appear on a horizontal number line from right to left, or as they appear on a vertical number line top to bottom. So let's practice these together. First of all, we're going to compare the fractions 1/2, -3/4, -1/2, and 3/4. Remember to first locate and identify 0, 1, and -1. That'll make it easier for us to understand. So 0 is in the center, -1 to the left, +1 to the right. Personally, I noticed that there are 2 negative fractions here. There's a -3/4 and a -1/2. Okay? So I'm going to place those in first. -1/2 is going to be halfway between 0 and -1, right? And then -3/4 would be halfway between these two, -3/4. Okay? Then I notice that there's 2 positive fractions. There's a positive 1/2, so that's going to be exactly in the middle of 0 and 1. 1/2, and a positive 3/4, which will go right here. And then it tells me to order the fractions plotted least to greatest. And it's really important that I pay attention to what it asks. Least to greatest. So I start on the left, and I have -3/4, -1/2, +1/2, and +3/4. So that one is completed. Okay, let's do another one together. This one is comparing decimals on a number line. You have 0.5, negative 0.75, negative 0.5, and positive 0.75. So once again, identify 0, and negative 1 and positive 1 will help you to know where everything else goes. Once again, personally, I like to focus on the negative ones and then the positive ones. So I see that there's a negative 0.5. Okay, that's exactly 1/2. Halfway between 0 and negative 1. So I put it right here. Negative 0.5. And then there's a negative 0.75, which will be exactly between these two, the negative 0.5 and the negative 1. So I put it right here, negative 0.75. Okay, and then I have the same two positive decimals over here. So halfway between these, I have a positive 0.5. And right between the 0.5 and the 1, I have a 0.75, and it's positive. And it says order the 4 decimals plotted, so the 4 plotted decimals from least to greatest. So I start at the left. My first decimal point is negative 0.75, and then negative 0.5, and then positive 0.5, and positive 0.75. That one is finished. Okay, here we have comparing decimal numbers. We have 1.5, negative 1.75, 1.25, negative 1.5, 1.75, and negative 1.25. Remember to first locate and identify 0, 1, 2, negative 1, negative 2. Okay? So 0 is going to be in the center, negative 1, negative 2, positive 1, positive 2. All right. You can order these any way you want. Now I'm just going to go in order this time from what it gives us. So 1.5, that's the same as 1.5, and it's positive, so it's over here on the right of the 0. It's between 1 and 2, right? So put our point, and this is 1.5. Okay, negative 1.75. So we go over negative 1, and here would be negative 1.5. So right about here would be a negative 1.75. Okay, I cross them off as I go so I don't get confused. Positive 1.25. So it's above 1, and it's halfway between 1 and 1.5. So about right here, put a dot, a point, and it's 1.25. Cross it off. Negative 1.5, once again, we're to the left of 0. 1.5 is between negative 1 and negative 2, right? So right here, I'm going to put this one above so we can see it, negative 1.5. Cross that off. We've got a positive 1.75. That's almost to the 2, right here. 1.75. And a negative 1.25. So we go negative 1, just a little bit farther over. We come to negative 1.25. Okay, I've plotted the 6 decimal numbers that were given there. It says order the 6 decimals plotted greatest to least. So I need to start, the greatest is the farthest to the right of the ones that I plotted. I've got positive 1.75, then a positive 1.5, then a positive 1.25, then a negative 1.25, a negative 1.5, and a negative 1.75. All right, there's a second page to the notes today. We're going to do one more together. And this is comparing some fractions. There's 6 fractions here. There's 1.5, negative 1 3/4, 1 1/4, negative 1 1/2, 1 3/4, negative 1 1/4. And we've got to identify 0, 1, 2, negative 1, negative 2 before we do this. So 0, negative 1, negative 2, positive 1, positive 2. The first number is 1.5. I cross it out between 1 and 2, 1.5, 1 and 1/2. Okay, and the next number is negative, so I'm now going to be the left of 0. It's negative 1 3/4. Almost to the 2, probably about right here. negative 1 3/4. Okay, now we have a positive 1 1/4, just over the 1. 1 1/4. Now we're back to another negative number, negative 1 1/2. That's going to be exactly between negative 1 and 2. Negative 1 1/2. Negative 1 1/2. 1 3/4 is the next one. It's almost a 2. Probably about right here. 1 3/4, positive. And the last one is negative 1 1/4. So I'm at negative 1 and a little bit farther. Negative 1 1/4. Okay? Now it says, order the 6 fractions plotted greatest to least. So I start with the greatest one over here of my plotted fractions. We had 1 3/4, and then 1 1/2, 1 1/4, negative 1 1/4, negative 1 1/2, and negative 1 3/4. So now what you need to do is you need to pause from the notes. You're going to try these two on your own. Make sure you pay attention to what the directions are. If it says least to greatest or greatest to least, put them on your number line first and then just copy them in order for those two problems. When you're finished, come up and let me check your notes. You can take 2 tickets for doing your notes. And that will be all. Thank you so much.